Welcome back to Investing Talk podcast.
Good to be here.
Today, we're taking a focused look at New Holdings, ticker NU. You shared some really interesting information, quite a bit actually, about this company.
Indeed. It's a fascinating player in the fintech space.
So our goal today is, to unpack all that, pull out the key insights, and really try to understand what makes them tick.
We've got analyst reports, financials, news, plenty to work with.
Looks like a compelling story unfolding, especially in Latin American fintech. Let's get started.
Okay, so first off, the scale of New Holdings. It's pretty staggering. They run this digital financial services platform.
Well, the customer numbers are huge, right?
Huge, 114 million customers. That's across Brazil, Mexico, and Colombia.
Wow. And in Brazil, it's something like half the adult population.
Over half, yes. Think about that penetration. Over half the adults in Brazil are new customers.
That's incredible market share. And their main thing is this low-cost digital banking model.
Exactly. Credit cards, savings accounts, loans, insurance, all digital, all low cost.
So that's the core offering.
It is. And they're not just big in Brazil. They're the #1 digital bank there by customer count.
But it's not just Brazil. You mentioned Mexico and Colombia.
Correct. They're growing incredibly fast in Mexico, over 20 million users as of late last year. And Colombia is showing strong growth too, over 2.5 million users.
So this model is proving successful outside their home market.
It certainly seems so. It points to a broader appeal.
What gives them the edge? You mentioned a competitive advantage.
Well, a big part is their cost structure. Very little physical infrastructure, no big branch networks.
All digital.
Mostly, yeah. And they have their own proprietary tech stack that helps keep costs down.
Makes sense. And customers seem happy? High net promoter scores, I saw?
Very high NPS, yes. That indicates strong brand loyalty, which is crucial in this market.
Okay, so low costs, happy customers. That sounds like a solid foundation.
It's a powerful combination. That low-cost structure lets them offer better pricing, better deals.
Right. And the loyalty means customers stick around.
And probably recommend it to others, feeding that growth cycle.
Let's pivot to the financials then. The numbers look pretty strong.
They really do. Revenue for fiscal year 2024 was $11.51 billion.
And that's up significantly year over year.
Up 58%, which is impressive growth. Q4 revenue was almost $3 billion, showing that momentum kept up.
That 58%, is that sustainable though? I mean, what about customer acquisition costs? Are they getting more efficient there?
That's a key question. But if you look back, they've been compounding revenue at around 50–60% annually since 2022.
So a strong trend.
Definitely. And recent data points towards maybe a $6 billion annualized run rate currently. So the growth seems to be continuing.
And it's translating to the bottom line too, not just top line growth.
It seems so. Net income for FY 2024 was reported at $1.97 billion.
With an EPS estimate around?
The estimate was around 40 to 45 cents per share for FY 2024. And the consensus forecast for this year, FY 2025, is looking even better, around $7.54.
Okay, so profitability is kicking in. What about return on equity? I saw a figure there that really stood out.
The ROE. Yes, annualized return on equity hit 29% in FY 2024.
29%. How does that stack up against others?
It stacks up very well. It significantly outperforms traditional banks like Itaú Unibanco, which is around 18%, and even other fintechs like Block, which is maybe 10%.
So they're generating strong returns on shareholder equity. That's impressive efficiency.
It really highlights their model's effectiveness, I think.
So rapid growth, improving profitability. Where's the money coming from to fund this?
Deposits.
Deposits are a huge part of it. They saw a massive surge, up 55% year over year.
To what level?
Reaching $28.9 billion. That shows a lot of customer trust, putting their money there.
Provides a solid funding base.
It does. And they're growing their lending too, particularly secured lending.
How much growth there?
Secured lending was up, get this, 615% year over year, reached $1.4 billion.
Wow, 650%. Those still relatively small compared to the deposit base, right?
Correct. It's growing fast, but from a smaller base compared to deposits. Still significant movement. And are people actually using their accounts? What's the activity rate like?
Very strong. 83% activity rate reported in Q4 2024. So most customers aren't just signing up, they're actively engaging.
Okay, so the picture is lots of active customers, growing deposits, expanding lending, strong profitability metrics like ROE. How is the market valuing all this?
Well, looking forward, the price-to-earnings ratio, the forward PE for December 2025, is around 21 times.
21x. How does that compare?
It's below some high-flying fintech peers, but definitely higher than traditional banks.
Suggests the market expects continued growth. What about price to book?
Forward price to book for December 2025 is about 5.01 times. Again, that reflects a premium.
A premium compared to regional peers.
Yes, compared to regional banks that might trade at, say, 1 to 3 times book value, the market's pricing in that high growth potential.
So that 21x PE, it's factoring in quite a bit of future success compared to the old guard banks.
Absolutely. The market expects them to keep delivering on that growth.
And analysts seem to agree. I saw Seeking Alpha has them as a strong buy.
They do, citing things like a low forward PE, looking further out, maybe to FY 2026, around 15x, and their leadership in these underbanked markets.
But we did see some wobbles in the stock price recently, didn't we? April had some down days.
Yes, there was some volatility in April 2025, declines on a few specific days.
Any particular reason? Profit taking, maybe?
That's likely part of it, especially after strong FY 2024 results. Plus, broader market jitters can play a role.
But it wasn't all negative.
No, the shares also jumped quite sharply after they reported a quarter-over-quarter revenue beat in April, too. So the market's definitely watching those performance numbers closely.
Makes sense. So what's actually driving all this growth? What are their main strategies?
Well, number one is just continuing to add customers. That pace is still remarkable.
How many are they adding daily?
In Q4 2024, it was over 55,000 new customers per day.
55,000 a day? That's fueling the expansion. What else?
Product diversification is key. They're pushing to cross-sell more products, like insurance, investment options, to their existing base. Get more revenue per customer.
Leveraging that massive user base.
Precisely. And of course, the geographic expansion we talked about, Mexico and Colombia, are major growth areas right now.
And I saw something about an investment outside Latin America, Time Group.
That's right. A $150 million strategic investment in Time Group.
What's the goal there?
It seems aimed at expanding their digital banking footprint into Africa and Asia. It hints at potential future growth beyond their current core markets, maybe applying their model elsewhere.
Interesting. So looking further afield. But growth like this always comes with risks, doesn't it?
Always. The competitive landscape is heating up.
How so?
Well, digital banking adoption is rising across Latin America, which is good, but it also attracts competition. Traditional banks are launching their own digital offerings, their own neobanks.
Fighting back.
And you have other big fintech players, too, like Mercado Pago, PicPay. It's getting crowded.
So increased competition. What about regulations? Any worries there?
Regulation is always a factor, especially in fintech. In Brazil, there's been some scrutiny over interchange fees. That could potentially impact their revenue model down the line.
Okay, so fee pressure is a risk.
And just general exposure to Latin American regulatory shifts, macroeconomic instability, those are ongoing risks. Currency devaluation is another one to watch in the key markets.
I remember some past market noise linking them vaguely to Evergrande issues causing dips.
Yes, that happened.
Right.
It shows sensitivity to broader global economic sentiment, even if the direct link is tenuous. Market perception matters.
And I noticed some financial metrics that might raise an eyebrow. High liability to asset ratio, negative pre-tax margin.
Good points. The high liability to asset ratio, around 85%, largely reflects their reliance on customer deposits, which is pretty normal for a digital bank model. Lots of deposits relative to other assets.
Okay, so that's explainable. But the negative pre-tax margin and ROA.
Right. Negative pre-tax margin, negative 8.7%, and ROA, negative 0.65%, were reported. This likely reflects their heavy investment in growth. Think customer acquisition costs, platform development, expansion.
So spending money to make money, basically. Investing heavily now.
Kind of. It can weigh on overall profitability metrics initially, but remember that very strong ROE we discussed.
The 29%.
Exactly. That suggests that while overall asset returns might look weak because of all the assets being gathered, like deposits, and the heavy investment spending, the actual return they're generating on their core equity capital is very high.
So they're efficient with shareholder money, even if overall margins are currently suppressed by growth spending.
That's one way to interpret it. You have to look at the whole picture. The high growth, the ROE, and those margin figures together. It suggests the investments might be paying off in terms of equity returns.
Okay, that clarifies things a bit. Finally, a quick word on management. David Velez, the co-founder, still CEO.
Yes, he's been CEO since the start in 2013. Led them through massive growth, reaching profitability quite fast for a fintech, the IPO expansion.
Seems like pretty solid leadership track record.
It does. And things like equity-linked compensation for management usually help align their interests with long-term shareholder value.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up. You've given us a detailed look at New Holdings, clearly a company showing Really impressive growth in a very dynamic market.
Definitely dynamic. Latin American fintech is moving fast.
They've built this huge customer base, strong presence, especially in Brazil, but expanding, and some compelling profitability metrics, particularly that ROE figure.
The ROE is a standout, yes.
But there are risks. Competition is rising, the regulatory landscape can shift, there's macroeconomic exposure in emerging markets.
Standard risks for this kind of play, but important ones.
Still, their strategy seems focused, and analysts are generally positive. What's the one thing that really stands out most to you from all this?
For me, it's that combination of breakneck customer growth with achieving such a strong ROE relatively quickly. It's a powerful demonstration against the traditional banking model.
And what bigger question does that raise for you?
The main question is sustainability. Can they keep up this growth pace and maintain or improve those profitability levels as competition gets tougher and regulators pay more attention? That's the key thing to watch, I think.
A fair point. Definitely one to keep an eye on. We absolutely encourage everyone listening to do their own further research. Maybe start with their investor relations materials for a deeper dive into the financials.
Good idea. Always important to dig deeper yourself.
And please remember to subscribe, like, and comment on this analysis. Let us know your thoughts.